right, it looks like we've had a few more folks join. So welcome to the Rapid Rehousing Bidders Conference. Just before we get started into the actual presentation, just a little bit of housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted onto the MOH website on Monday. All attendees right now are muted to prevent background noise. At the end of the webinar, we'll have a Q&A session, and we should be able to unmute you at that time. If there are questions about the competition process and the application, those should be answered during this webinar. But if you have specific questions about your agency or eligibility or some specifics about your project proposal, you can always send those to our inbox at hsp.applications@baltimorecity.gov. And as we do get questions through this webinar and throughout the open RFP process, we'll be developing a FAQ sheet, like and that will be posted again with the grant opportunities on the grant opportunities website, along with the other materials for this RFP. And so here with me today, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Paroma Nandi. I'm with the Mayor's Office of Homeless Services as the COC and grant coordinator. And I have Maria here, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Maria Martin Zavora, and I'm the consultant that's been working with MOHS, and I have been working primarily on rapid rehousing.
Thanks, Maria. And so today's agenda, we'll talk a little bit about the American Rescue Plan. You'll hear us call it ARPA. We'll talk about the vision for rapid rehousing here in Baltimore, some information about program eligibility, application instructions, a little bit about the project budget, and then the application review and selection process. And then again, we'll go into the Q&A. So the American Rescue Plan, also known as ARPA, is in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Congress passed the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, Public Law 117-2, intended to provide funding for local economic recovery and pandemic response. The Mayor's Office of Homeless Services, along with the COC and other stakeholders within Baltimore City, have worked diligently on a strategic investment plan in regards to ARPA and how funding and resources will be prioritized. So there's a lot more information you can find on our website. However, for this specific project, just over 5.6 million has been dedicated to fund rapid rehousing efforts for individuals and families experiencing homelessness. So again, as I mentioned, the strategic investment plan is to prioritize the use of key resources, including but not limited to the resources provided through ARPA, as part of the overall community recovery from COVID-19, and to support efforts to prevent and end homelessness in Baltimore. And the use of rapid rehousing is a key and central intervention to work towards these primary objectives that are addressed in the plan. And so those are to rehouse people experiencing homelessness and stabilize people at imminent risk, reduce unsheltered homelessness in encampments, drive progress towards racial equity, and then enhance partnerships to advance person-centered approaches. I'm going to pass it over to Maria now, and she's going to talk more about the details of rapid rehousing.
Thank you, Paroma. So first, let's talk a little bit about the vision for rapid rehousing. As a community, we are envisioning that the community will work together as one and strive to ensure that rapid rehousing is a successful permanent housing intervention that allows households experiencing homelessness to return to housing stability quickly and sustain. We aim to provide the following: case management and supportive services that are required to secure housing permanency, resources necessary to maintain housing and create opportunities for a better life in the future, services that are fully accessible easy to navigate, collaborative, culturally competent, voluntary, and flexible. So in our pursuit of this vision, there will be newly developed rapid rehousing standards that will be released to support these services through the RFP process. So at this point in time, there is an active work group that is actually working on standards for the rapid rehousing that will be eventually issued as part of the official contract process. Next slide. So what is rapid rehousing? Rapid rehousing is an intervention informed by housing first approach that's a critical part of the community's effective homeless crisis response. Rapid rehousing rapidly connects families and individuals experiencing homelessness to permanent housing through a tailored package of assistance that may include the use of time-limited financial assistance and targeted support services. Rapid rehousing programs help families and individuals living on the streets or in emergency shelters solve the practical and immediate challenges to obtaining permanent housing while reducing the amount of time they experience homelessness, avoiding a near-term return to homelessness, and linking to community resources that enable them to achieve housing stability in the long term. So what we really would like folks to take away from what rapid rehousing is that this is an intervention that we're utilizing in the community to help with our homeless clients. It is intended to be a temporary resource that leads to a long-term housing placement. It is not a different version of permanent supportive housing. It is not a program that offers ongoing financial support. So the program really is intended to house clients quickly, assist clients through addressing barriers or social needs or services that are impeding their ability to maintain permanent housing. So the goal would be some form of permanent, stable housing that is appropriate for the client based on a thorough assessment and evaluation of the client needs. Next slide. So of course, the Baltimore community is utilizing the housing first model. And we want to make sure that that is at the forefront of all of the work that we're doing, in particular with rapid rehousing. Homelessness is first and foremost a housing problem and should be treated as such. Housing, of course, is the right to which all are entitled. Issues that may have contributed to a household's homelessness can best be addressed once they are housed. People who are homeless or on the verge of homelessness should be returned to a stabilized permanent housing as quickly as possible without preconditions of treatment acceptance or compliance for issues such as mental health and substance abuse. So in other words, what we're saying is that while we know that clients may have some challenges, that should not be a barrier to getting them housed, but we should be working to ensure that we're addressing those barriers and assist in maintaining permanent housing. The service provider working with the individual should connect the client to robust resources necessary to sustain that housing. And participation is achieved through assertive engagement, not coercive. Next slide. So in rapid rehousing, there are 3 key components that we utilize to be able to implement the program and ensure success. 1 is housing identification. Housing identification should be looking at units, apartments, working with landlords, explaining the rapid rehousing program to prospective landlords, assisting the landlords in ensuring that their units will pass inspection, and making sure that the housing that is identified is also something that is in line with the client's goals and expectations. So as part of the housing identification, we're looking at making sure that the providers are assisting clients with identifying available units and accompany clients to view units within 10 days of enrollment. Coordinate transportation for unit walkthroughs prior to the lease signing. assist clients with reviewing and interpreting the terms of the lease prior to signing, ensure housing units have an approved inspection and unit is registered, inspected, and licensed to ensure that it meets basic safety and maintenance requirements. Next slide. So the next key component, rental assistance administration. This is a big piece of the work that providers will do, because you will be assisting with some form of rental assistance depending on what you have established will be the plan with the client. So you'll assist with quickly resolving an immediate housing crisis. Rental assistance provides both short and medium-term financial assistance to households to subsidize the rental payments. This includes helping with security deposits, moving expenses, utilities, and other expenses that will help the household obtain and ultimately sustain housing on their own. In determining rental assistance, programs should utilize a progressive engagement approach, which allows programs to be attentive to the ability of the household to maintain housing once the rental assistance subsidy ends. Next slide. So how do we determine rental assistance? We're asking providers to look at progressive engagement models. We've provided in the RFP 3 different models that you can look at. The following are some examples. Declining subsidy. So the declining subsidy is initial subsidy is high and declines on a step down schedule, regardless of the client's income or circumstance. Fixed percentage. The subsidy is based on a fixed percentage of the household's income, regardless of whether a household's income increases or decreases. The household continues to pay a fixed percentage of their income towards rent, and the subsidy covers the difference. Fixed subsidy. The subsidy is a fixed amount toward the rent, which is based on family or size of the unit, not income. So something to keep in mind is that, again, we would like providers to use a progressive engagement model that leads to the client ultimately taking on the rent on their own at the end of the program or the agreed upon agreement with the providers. Next slide. Case management services. This is the third component of rapid rehousing, and one that we are hoping that providers will be able to work with clients diligently and intensively to ensure that there are robust wraparound services for the clients enrolled in the program. So we've taken the liberty to provide some examples of what we believe the case management responsibility is in rapid rehousing. So we would like providers to use a client-centered approach, housing-focused, in completing an individualized service plan with each client. This must include a plan for long-term permanent housing upon exit of the rapid rehousing program. Serve as a broker who is accessing to mainstream services and benefits. Refer and connect clients to employment, workforce development, and educational employees that the client identifies as needed to achieve their goals. Refer and connect clients to health, mental health, and behavioral health services as needed. Continuously assess the client's social wellness needs and make necessary referrals to wraparound services. Assist with developing and implementing individualized budgets. Accompany clients to appointments as necessary. Refer clients to all available affordable housing resources, such as low-income housing, referrals to permanent supportive housing, referrals to senior housing, veterans housing, or assisted living if necessary. So what I would like to stress is that the key takeaway for case management is that providers should be working with clients to ensure that all of the services needed for the clients to be successful and take on rent and maintain their unit have been implemented or connected to during the time that they are in the program. Next slide. So program eligibility, I will turn this over to Paroma.
Thanks, Maria. So just a little bit about the eligibility. So the target population for these projects are for individuals and families that currently are experiencing both category 1 or 4 homelessness and whose income is under 30% of the area median income for 2022. And again, these are aligned with the requirements under the Emergency Solutions Grant. The participants will be referred through Baltimore City's coordinated access system, where households are prioritized according to approved criteria. So client preference for participating in rapid rehousing intervention, for independent housing, the priority for the most vulnerable households, and then the length of varied homelessness serves as a tiebreaker for households with the same VI score. So again, folks are being prioritized through our coordinated access system. And then these projects should also prepare to serve individuals of color, seniors, individuals with multiple health conditions, pregnant or parenting individuals, and then folks that identify as LGBTQ or are victims of sexual violence, trafficking, or exploitation, and others who have lived experience in institutional settings. So again, the target population is quite broad, but projects should be prepared to serve a very diverse group of people. Additionally, with eligibility, households must meet the HUD homeless definition. Again, we just talked a little bit about that, of meeting being eligible under the paragraph 1 of the homeless definition or paragraph 4. And below it goes into a little bit of detail about both category 1 and category 4. So category 1 being literally homeless, so an individual or family who lacks a fixed or regular adequate nighttime residence. And then category 4 is for anyone who's fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence. Projects that are selected for this will have to be able to have verification of homelessness as well, and that should happen as folks are going through the coordinated access system. So literally homeless, observations by outreach workers, referrals, or certificate by the head of the household seeking assistance, and then category 4, an oral statement works from the head of the household, can be certified by intake worker or service provider again. Application instructions. So go into a little bit of detail about that. So to be an eligible applicant, to apply for these funds, you must be a nonprofit organization, tax exempt, or another city government agency. You also must have a certificate of good standing with the state of Maryland that is dated within 30 days of submission. And you must be able to provide at least 2 years of financial audits that demonstrate the financial and management capacity of your organization to carry out a project as detailed in this project application, and the capacity to administer any type of federal funds. And if your agency does not have a formal audit at this time, MOHS will review and consider any other agency board approved financial statements. And then the commitment to operating these programs under the Housing First model, and also compliant with all fair housing policies. So some additional minimum expectations for providers that are looking to apply for this funding. You should be located or provide services in Baltimore City and serve individuals and families experiencing homelessness. You must comply with program requirements as per the Baltimore City COC policies and procedures and any ARPA rules and regulations. All projects must agree to utilize the Baltimore City's coordinated access system to receive referrals to their program. You must comply with all program reporting and evaluation requirements, and all projects must participate in Baltimore City's HMIS, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, and provide accurate reporting to help measure progress and project performance. You have to adhere to the program compliance and monitoring as detailed in the final executed contract. You should be prepared to participate as a funded agency in the Baltimore City's annual point in time count and housing inventory count, and youth reach when those are up and running. Work in collaboration with the COC's advisory committees, so the Lived Experience Advisory Committee and the Youth Action Board, and other committees as needed. Some additional expectations. You should think about incorporating individuals with lived experience of homelessness throughout the project planning, design, and implementation phases. Again, adhere to the housing first practices and fair housing compliance. And then there are some required insurance coverages that are evaluated at the time of contract. At the time of contracting. So if selected, your organization must currently carry or be willing to obtain the following insurance coverages. And again, that's all outlined in the RFP document. And if you have any questions about that, feel free to put something in the chat or email us. So I talked a little bit about participating in the HMIS system. HMIS stands for the Homeless Management Information System. It's operated by MOHS in accordance with the federal regulations. MOHS provides new user training and technical assistance. To ensure compliance and data quality. It's the centralized database that providers must use to enter client and programmatic data. And then all projects must participate in Baltimore City's HMIS to provide accurate reporting to help measure progress and project performance. All projects must comply with the program reporting and evaluation requirements within HMIS. And again, HMIS data is aggregated and submitted to HUD in different reports. So this is a requirement of any homeless service provider receiving funding through the City of Baltimore. And we talked a little bit about the coordinated access system. So it's also called coordinated entry in other communities. So you may have heard of it as that. But it's the central and standard system that prioritizes housing and services for individuals and families experiencing homelessness. All rapid rehousing providers are required to participate in coordinated access, and you must receive all your referrals through the coordinated access system. So you can't just have walk-ins come into your program. They have to come through that coordinated access system. So the timeline for this RFP, we have a little bit of time, and I'm glad we've started early, but we are expecting all projects to start October 1st. So again, the release of this RFP was Tuesday, May 31st. Today we're at the bidders conference, so June 10th. Applications aren't due until July 15th. So in between now and July 15th, there's opportunities to request additional technical assistance for your project proposals. All questions must be submitted by July 8th, so we have enough time to respond before the deadline. The scoring and review of projects will happen right after the due date, so between the 18th and the 29th, and then we expect to have conditional awards out the week of August 5th. And again, the expectation is that these projects will start October 1st. And that contracting will happen between that conditional award phase and the project start date. So I mentioned a little bit about technical assistance. We really encourage providers that are new and providers that have already been receiving funds from the City of Baltimore, or even maybe operating rapid rehousing, to ask questions. For any support, again, those questions are, the deadline to submit any TA questions are July 8th. And that's just so we have enough time to respond before the deadline. And again, that our inbox there is HSP applications at baltimorecity.gov. And then some tips for successful application. Again, proposals should show a clear understanding of rapid rehousing and the three components the three components that were discussed earlier. So housing identification, rental assistance, administration, and then the support services and case management. You should involve people with lived experience in your project design. Your budget should be reflective of the program proposed, and the budget narrative should relate to how funding will support the program implementation, and they should be reasonable. Ensure that you answer each question and provide all of the supporting documents. So make sure you leave enough time to gather all of the materials necessary for a complete application. And then again, we encourage you to ask questions ahead of time to ensure that there's a timely response. I think this slide was duplicated by accident, but again, the technical assistance is available all the way until July 8th. So again, we encourage you to ask questions when you have them. There are some resources we've linked into the RFP. We really encourage you to take a look at that strategic investment plan that goes into a lot of detail of how ARPA funding and resources are being prioritized in the city. We also encourage you to look at the Baltimore City Action Plan on Homelessness, although it is a couple of years old. The COC Journey Home worked hard on prioritizing their action steps, and many of them specifically as it relates to increasing housing are still, are still important today. So again, take a look at that. And then some national resources that can be really helpful. The National Alliance to End Homelessness has a rapid rehousing toolkit. So it can really help you provide a design, like they have templates and designs for rapid rehousing and best practices, things that can be really helpful for your project proposal. USICH has a housing first checklist, and then HUD has a rapid rehousing brief that's also, provides a great description of the purpose of rapid rehousing. So again, those are some national resources, all of those link to additional resources. So you can really go and get a lot of great information there. Submission requirements. So again, like always, we're only accepting electronic copies of applications. They all should be submitted to HSP applications at baltimorecity.gov. Again, no paper or fax applications will be accepted. You need to make sure that you submit a complete application, that you complete that checklist of all the supporting documents required, that you have an Excel budget and a PDF formatted application that has all of the questions answered. And the projects must be received before July 15th at 4 p.m. I won't go into too much detail about project budgets, but if you have additional questions about how to complete your project budget, I do encourage you to, again, ask those questions. You should, the budget requirements are, you enter estimated costs of the proposed programs by the funding categories for all costs which are projected to be paid by ARPA funds for the full grant term. And again, the grant term for this project is October 1st, 2022 to September 30th, 2023. ARPA funding will be extended past that timeline, but again, we're asking that you submit a budget for 1 year. You need to be able to explain and justify all the costs which are projected to be paid with ARPA grant funds. And that should include a narrative that provides a clear breakdown of those projected costs. So there's like an example of, if you were to have a line item of utility assistance, that's the type of narrative we're looking for to come up with that total. And again, such something to keep in mind. If selected, an applicant must provide detailed spend down plans while they're in progress of their project within that grant term, projects that are not demonstrating adequate spending will be at risk for reallocation of funds. So again, just something to keep in mind that we want to make sure that the projects that are selected are, because this is time limited funding, although it's more than just 1 year, we will be mindful of how projects are spending their funding. And so again, want to make sure that when you submit your budget, that it's reasonable, that it's very clear what those expenses are. And again, that is detailed in that budget narrative. And again, that should all be submitted within that Excel document. Within that Excel document, you'll find a tab for the rental assistance. We've already linked it to the FY22 FMR data to calculate the rental assistance, so that shouldn't be an issue. Support services include a wide range of services such as case management, assistance with moving costs, client assistance, treatment and counseling. There's that's not the full list, but again, you can find, when you look at the budget, you can see all the different types of support services that are eligible under this project. So it is, you can fill out those line items as necessary. And again, as I mentioned, for the rental assistance, there's a separate tab that already has the FY22 FMR. So you just really type in the number of households and bedroom sizes that you're going to be applying for, and it should automatically calculate the expense. You'll note that when you put the budget together, we are budgeting for 12 months of assistance for each household. That may not be the case for each household that you're serving. Not every household will need the 12 months of assistance. And based off your progressive engagement model that you do decide to use, there will be some cost savings within that rental assistance line item. And so again, if you're selected, you'll work with your program compliance officer to make budget modifications as necessary, or potentially be able to over-lease your project and serve more clients. So again, there's just want to keep that in mind, that although you'll be budgeting for 12 months of full rental assistance, that's not going to be the case that you'll provide each household with 100% of rent for 12 months. And again, that will match your progressive engagement model, but something just to kind of consider that that will be something that you'll be able to keep on reviewing as you go through your project. And again, just a little bit more about the case management budget. This should really include, there's a tab for personnel costs, and that should be calculated for any type of staff that are going to be providing case management. And again, it's for the full grant term of October 1st, 2022 to September 30th, 2023. And then there's also non-personal costs that can be included in the support services, such as utility assistance, deposits, moving costs, credit repair, legal services, and etc. And again, those line items are, you'll be able to see those in that Excel budget. So just have a couple more slides to go. Sorry, I feel like I've been talking for a while. The application and review and selection. So MOHS goes through a pretty strong review process. So there's a threshold review to ensure that project application is complete. So, we're looking at checking off the boxes, just like you should when you submit your application, to ensure that you have all your supporting documents. So these are things that we're going to need to see. We need that nonprofit status letter, so that federal tax exemption determination letter if you're a nonprofit organization, articles of incorporation and bylaws, that certificate of good standing, and it must be within 30 days of submission, a current list of board of directors, agency organization chart, a projected project organizational chart, your audit or financial statements, and we would like to see them for the last 2 years. Excuse me. And then obviously the completed application, and then the completed budget and narrative. So the application scoring, if you pass our threshold review, you'll go into the scoring phase of the application, and MOHS will have a review panel of MOHS and other stakeholders that will participate, that all have signed a conflict of interest agreement, a conflict of interest statement prior to reviewing your application to score based off the following areas. So interest and project understanding, agency experience and capacity, project design, lived experience, involvement and leadership, goals and implementation plan. And then you'll see here that that equals 100 points, but the scoring is out of 110. So there are some bonus points available. If there's not a requirement for match funding at this point, and match funding is a commitment to leverage other resources and funds to support this project. So if you do have that ability to submit match funding, you may be eligible for additional points. So 10 additional points will be provided if you can submit a 25% cash match for the project, and that's 25% of your project budget. And then 5 additional points for providing a combination of, again, 25% match, but it's a combination of cash and in-kind match funding. So again, this is not a requirement, but projects will receive bonus points if they are able to provide a commitment letter along with their application. And again, there's some details in the RFP about that. And if you have additional questions, feel free to ask. And with that, we are in our Q&A session. So I'm going to just mute myself. I think if you raise your hand, I can unmute you, or I can check if folks have put anything in the chat. And we'll pause for about 5 minutes or so. So I'm not seeing any questions or any hands raised. Again, if there are any questions, please email hsbapplications@baltimorecity.gov. Again, this webinar will be posted to the website early next week. And the application submission deadline, just a reminder, is July 15th. So there's just over a month to get your applications in. And yeah, with that, we're gonna end the webinar today. Thank you for participating. Have a great Friday.